You must respect three things. You respect your name, you respect your family, and you respect the institution that you are part of.
Yeah.
I believe in those three.
Yep.
If you believe in those values and you keep those values close to heart, success will come. Same thing once I got to college, the same thing, you know. I remember my English teacher told me that I'd never make it. You know, when you go to college, you have to take that, in that English class, that first class, you have to take that test, that one-on-one test.
Yeah.
So I took it and I failed it. And the lady she called me, she said, son, you ain't gonna make it in college. I said, oh my goodness. As I walked down here, I said, oh, this lady just told me I'm miles away, I ain't gonna make it. I'm the only guy that's living that can say, I went to both of those guys' school. I went to Brian Piccolo's school. Brian Piccolo went to St. Thomas.
Okay.
Broke his records. And I went to the University of Kansas where Gail Sayers went and broke his records.
That's
There's
crazy.
only one guy that can say that. I love looking at myself. Right? I work too hard to be at the age of 57 years old, and you know I could be up here with these young guys and still, you know, keep my looks together with them. So you know, I feel good. Let's roll.
It's been a long time.
Listen, man,
Let's go.
This is beautiful. This is what we call action. We on the move.
We on the move. We on the move.
They're gonna use this as a promo.
For sure.
This will be the move. The new
We're
move.
on the move with the Hall of
bro.
Famer himself, 396 yards, 58 carries. Listen, they can't get like that. You can't find nobody in America right now that has carried the football more times than me. 58 carries in one game, and that game was against who? My rival. That's why I'm telling you, we on the move. Let's go.
We on the move. Well, I don't think I'm able to follow up the introduction for Tony like he gave himself. So I'm going to try my best. So Maxie Sands, also known as Tony Sands, motivational speaker, fitness expert, and former, I don't even want to say former, elite athlete.
Right. Still doing it.
Still elite. He's a NASM certified trainer, Vertimax brand ambassador, holds multiple performance certifications. Tony made history as a two-time NCAA rushing record holder and was the Big 8 Player of the Year in 1991. One of his most legendary feats was setting the record with 58 carries, not 57, 58 carries for 396 yards in a single game, Kansas versus Missouri. Today, he channels the same discipline into helping others develop strength, speed, and mental toughness through his programs, brand, and speaking engagements, and also these lovely books here as well. So make sure can people get these now?
Yes, you can. You can go to Amazon, and especially the one where it says "I was before my time." That was a book I wrote about my football career and the things and the challenges that I went through on the field and away from the game. The mental things that I went through when I stopped playing the game, and how I was able to get back up, pull myself up by my bootstraps, and become the trainer and the person that I am today. So. You know, that's a book that digs deep into my life. Let people see behind the scenes of who Tony Sands was. As you call me, my legal name. They say the name that's on my birth certificate was Maxie Sands. Maxie Anthony Sands. Because some people say, well, where do you get Tony from? Well, where I'm from in the hood, Anthony is short. Tony is short for Anthony. So that's where we get the Tony from. For those that are wondering where Tony came from. And it was more of a show name. Maxie to me just didn't appeal because in the 8th grade when I really started playing this game and I started saying, hey man, I want to take this somewhere. I remember one day I was in the 5th, this was when I was in the 5th grade. I'm gonna take you a little ways back to when I knew I was going to be signing my autographs. I was in class and the teacher said, okay, we got to get ready for assignment. And I was just scribbling my name because that's how I saw athletes do with their name. They would scribble them. So I was just in there scribbling, and I kept repeating it, scribbling. So the teacher said, hey, you got to get ready, get your assignment going. You got to get ready. And I was focused in that this is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do no assignment. So they snuck and called my mom because I wasn't listening to the teacher. You know, my vision was that one day this autograph was going to be worth something. So that channeled my focus straight to that. My mom walks in the classroom and say, hey, listen, they just called me off work. And so I knew when I saw a face come through that little peephole, I said, oh my goodness, I'm in trouble. So she pulled me out of the classroom. Boy, if you don't get and do what that teacher tell you, I know something. I said, but Ma, I had a dream that my name was going to be worth something. And I was focused. She said, yeah, it's going to be worth something. But you might not live to see that worth something if you don't get this work done. Yeah. So I went ahead and went back in class and started doing my work. But when I was in the 8th grade is when my life really took off. And I knew then that Tony rung more bells than Max.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to the media, Tony is more of that, was that masculine. And I love my father to death who passed that name down. That name has been passed down now to my son and to my grandson. So it's 5 of us, 4 of us that are still living. So when I say it resonated more, it took off from Tony Sands. And I knew from then, from the 8th grade, that I was going to make that name a household name throughout the country. Now, it took me a time to get there. So it wasn't something that, you know, because I didn't have the height, I didn't have the size back and then. That's why my book is titled, I Was Before My Time. Because back then, if you wasn't 6 foot, 200 pounds, you wasn't getting drafted. You was not looked at as prototypical running back. So, you know, I knew at that time I had to overcome a lot of things. I knew this journey would be a tough journey. It wouldn't be something easy, but I was willing to put the time in to make sure that that journey takes place, that that dream becomes reality. Sometimes we dream and we don't wake up. So I was going to have to wake up to make that dream become a reality.
Yeah, that's fire.
That's tough. Hey, listen. Knowing from where he came from, knowing from
where did he come from?
Come on, well, here, first of all, I want to say, you know, having you up here,
yes,
is it kind of just brings me back
yes.
to where I was as
yes.
a kid. And he talks about being in 8th grade. And before I even say anything about me, I want to just say, hey, look, so Tony Sands has been in my life since probably 7, yes. 8 years old. So 30 years of my life, I've known Tony, and not only did I know Tony, but he has been, one of the biggest people in my life, inspirational wise, motivational wise, but also, you know, attentive to the fact that you better be where you supposed to be and do what you supposed to be doing in the right way in our community.
Yes.
Right, in order to go to the next level, to do things like what he did right here. Because in our community, right, sports was everything.
Yeah.
Right, you know, we talk about being from the hood,
yes.
being from, right, he, you know, not just from the college level, but let's go back even further to the St. Thomas
yes.
Aquinas level.
Yes.
The prominent high school in the United States of America where people know who St. Thomas Aquinas is when it comes to sports, all sports. It's the best high school. You know, we can argue that all day long. I know somebody's gonna see this. And they're gonna argue with me about Texas and California, about this and that. And I just know it's not. I like it.
Some people like to argue, but the argument doesn't have value to it. It doesn't have substance. When you talk about debating St. Thomas Aquinas High School, we have substance. If you look at the draft, if you look at guys, active guys throughout the NFL, it speaks volumes. That's us.
Yeah.
When it comes to winning state championships, not only in football, but in all sports, that's us. When you look at the all sports trophy here in the state of Florida alone, that's us. So I'm telling you, when you argue and when you fight for a debate, make sure you have substance in that debate. Don't just be talking, because I'm going to make you give me the facts of what's got to be given. That's what I'm saying.
For sure.
They got to get me the facts. Don't go to talking to me, because I done did my research on you before you come to do the facts on me. I'm a fact check you. How many guys you have in the league? How many guys have you having in the league? How many Hall of Famers you got that have produced at your school? If you can't give me those facts, once I hit you with the Hall of Famers, period, you're going to shut down. That's going to shut you down right out the gate.
Out the gate.
I'm just telling you. They got to have, so if they do come up with that, I want them to do some research. That's why it is so beautiful. We got this thing called Google. You can do all the research now. See, back in my day, you had to grab that Sunday paper to find the research. You ain't got to do that now. It's at your fingertips. Hit Google, it's going to give you everything.
I'm about to Google this.
Everything.
Yes.
At GPT. Sponsoring.
Everything about who we are.
Who was the most influential in your cultivation of life for you to become the man that you are today? Who, I know it's been different seasons and different people have come and go, but like,
Yes.
who was the most?
Well, when my father, to me, was the most when it comes to channeling me in the right direction. You got to remember, my father, before he passed, he was a Vietnam veteran. He passed on my wife's birthday. So it was a little different because he passed in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
He came down and, he was going through his struggles of PTSD. So he was fighting that battle. I had to admit him a couple times, for his safety to the VA hospital here in Miami to make sure that his safety was the utmost. And one day he was adamant about coming down to spend a little time with me. And I said, Dad, you don't have to do that. He said, no, I want to come spend some time with you, son. And I said, Dad, you sure you don't have to, He said, no. And so he got to my house, and about 30 minutes in, my wife comes in. She said, where your dad at? I said, he in the backyard, because he loved to go to my backyard. My backyard, I've built to a tropical oasis. You can rent my backyard out alone as an Airbnb of what I did back there. So he loved it being back there, loved it, planting, cutting. Anything in my backyard was where he wanted to be. He felt safe there. And I said, he's in the backyard. And she said, no, I don't see him. And I said, well, let me go look. I went and looked, and as I looked out of my backyard, I didn't see him, but as soon as I looked to the left, my dad was face down on the ground. So at that point, I had to go over and flip him over and start CPR. That's probably when you're talking about a parent. That's one of the toughest things that you have to do. And I was doing CPR, but I'm figuring out as I'm doing the CPR, I'm telling myself I gotta save my dad. I can't. I've been able to save a lot of people, but I gotta be able to save my dad. And the point that I knew that he wasn't going to make it is when the ambulance was still sitting there and they had him in the truck, and they said, you go ahead and go to the hospital. And when I turned the corner, and the hospital is not that far from my house, less than a mile from my house, and they were still there, I say two things. I looked at my wife, I said, he didn't make it. And they got us to the hospital, but they were still working him because I knew one of the nurses that was working him. She was working him. And she kept working him. And my brother, who's a paramedic, Sean, we walked toward the bed, and that gave her relief that, hey, she can come down. That she can come down. And she came down, and she said, I did my best. I said, yeah, we know. And he was my most inspiring, but someone that I grew up with. I grew up with my Uncle Michael Irvin. And he was he said, we came from a house, he came from a household, we had about 10 people in a 3-bedroom house. So you got to understand, do your math about how many people per room when mom and my grandmother and my grandfather occupied one by themselves. So now you're splitting up 10 to 12 people in 2 rooms. So his drive, his motivation is what made me see that dreams are possible if we work hard enough for him. Me and him came up more or less like brothers because we're only 2 years apart. And
the Michael Irvin.
The Michael Irvin, the playmaker.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Super
said it so
Bowl.
chill, and I was like, all right, maybe
Super
another Michael
Bowl,
Irvin.
yeah.
This who you practicing
Yeah,
against.
yeah.
This who you going
Yeah.
against every day.
Should I say that?
But you see the mentality
Yeah.
that they come from, right? That's that
Wow.
mentality.
Survival, man.
Yeah,
It's-
that's that
it's-
mentality.
I was driving here and my content creator, B said, hey man, you ever been in one of those mazes that you escape from? And he said, yeah, I went to Orlando to escape from one. I said, bro, I escaped every day. I escaped every day in the hood. I didn't have to go to Orlando. I escaped this. I lived this escape.
Yeah.
Because there's very few. And me and Mike were looked at 2 of the people that's in our community that was not supposed to succeed.
Right.
We was told that by our neighbors. The neighbors were giving, their kids had all the nice, pretty toys, had all the nice, pretty clothes. Well, we was sharing shoes and things of that nature. Me and Mike was so close that, man, we'll tell you, and it was, you're talking about 10 people, food becomes scarce. So if you don't make it home in time, it ain't no food. You ain't eating till the next day. And the next day means breakfast at school or lunch at school. So me and him would, go to the corner store, it was Miss Betty, and we would cuff our stuff up on our shoulder, run in the house, go in the bathroom. This is how close we were. He was using the bathroom, I was eating, and we would flip-flop. That's how close we were. We weren't thinking about, hey, you look at it nowadays, somebody here actually sitting on the toilet, somebody sitting on the tub, and the person eating while that person, man, it's different. We were that close, though. We shared that close of a bond with each other that we knew we got to escape from this. So that was my escape. Mm-hmm. I did that. I didn't have to go to Orlando to escape anything. Yeah. Escaping the danger zone of my neighborhood was my escape.
How important was that, having somebody who, as an athlete, and you guys both were probably the best in the entire city of Fort Lauderdale and down, but both of y'all grew up together, both of y'all worked together. Like, how important was that to have that rivalry? Did y'all have rivalries like who's gonna have 200 yards this game, or who was gonna have but because of that, that drive for each other, especially when it comes to, because we're gonna switch over, we talk about sports, but that's a business too, right?
Yes.
So it's in sports, that is the business. For us, that was the business, right?
That was the business.
That was the business.
And because we played two positions, two different. Now, I was the dog, and he'll tell you, coming up in Little League, I was that dog.
Yeah.
He'll tell you himself quick. Mike, believe it or not, Mike didn't start in Little League. He played for, at that time, we played at Fort Lauderdale, and it was called the Fort Lauderdale Vikings, who he played for. I played for the Fort Lauderdale Dolphins. But Mike didn't start. Mike wasn't a starter at all. I was that dog. I was him. As the kids would say nowadays, I'm him. And Mike started flourishing because he started working hard. We were those guys that we would be running down Sunrise Boulevard to 31st with full gear, shoulder pads, helmets, all gear on. And people were blowing at us saying, man, y'all crazy. What y'all doing? Y'all crazy. But they didn't realize their crazy was our reality. You know what I mean? They thought, man, these two crazy folks, they're running down the street, but didn't realize we had a dream, we had a vision. And the only way that vision was going to be reality is if we outwork people. We had to outwork them. You had to outwork them constantly.
Say that again.
You got to outwork people. You can't sit and not. While that person's working, you're working. While they're sleeping, you're working. They never outwork you. That was our drive, because we didn't want to be able to have to come back and live in the situation that we was living in. That was motivation. Every time you got up, you had to step up because people, but it was love there. Now, the difference of it is, and different than this time, it was love in there because you was at your grandparents' home. It was a loving environment. Despite you not having nothing, you had the world because you had love in that environment. But we wanted to get out of that environment. And then the only steering wheel that we had to get us out of that environment was sports, was football. So we were dedicated. Mike, in his journey, he was the first guy to ever sue Broward County school system for a transfer rule. Even though he lost it, but he decided he was going to stay at St. Thomas because he left Piper, and he was going to stay at St. Thomas, sit out his junior year, play his senior year. Mike played 2 years really of high school football before he went on to become one of the UM's greatest and one of the greatest at the NFL level and a 3-time Super Bowl champion Hall of Famer. I followed that same trail. I went to St. Thomas in my 8th grade year. I was the first guy in the state of Florida to rush for 1,000 yards at the high school level in 8th grade. But then I left there and I went to St. Thomas. And I'm going to give you a quick story. When I arrived to St. Thomas, there was 2 guys there that they were saying was going to be the next great ones to come out of there. And I write about it in my book. Albert Gibson was one. Stephen Scott was a fullback, so Albert Gibson would be the guy that I would have to take out if I wanted to be that great one to leave St. Thomas. And Albert, I give it to you, Albert was that dude, but he wasn't tough enough. He had all the athletic ability in the world, but he wasn't tough enough. So it was only going to take you so far. So when you get in them trenches, if you're not mentally tough, you're going to cave in. We was at MacArthur High School. I can remember this game to this day. We at MacArthur, and Abbott was on the other end. Slip, who was the starter at that time, who was the fastest guy in the nation, needed a blow. And I tugged on Coach George Smith, and I said, hey, Coach, let me go in. Now, I'm just coming out of 8th. I said, let me go in, Coach. I can get the job done. Let me go in. Which he knew it, but he had to believe in it.
Mm-hmm.
Said, go ahead, son. Apple's down there. Got in there, broke 50 yards, took it to the house. And when I walked off, I looked Abbott in his eyes, like I'm looking you in your eyes, and I told him, I said, son, you'll never play here again. Never. I own this now.
You were younger?
Yeah, I was younger.
You said son?
You know what that meant?
Hey, listen, that meant,
Yeah, you know
because
that
see, in
meant.
our hood,
You gonna be my son.
in the hood, that's what we heard, son. Son,
Yeah.
you understand that,
Yeah.
son?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wanted him to really understand and feel where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I couldn't call him bro.
Nah,
Then that mean the
yeah,
relationship
yeah.
was too friendly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Nah, son,
son,
you never
though.
play here. It's in my
It's
book.
like the Allen Iverson step over.
Yeah.
It's like a step over.
And guess what? He never played.
Never played again.
Man.
They had to switch him. He went to defensive back. Even Slip Watkins had issues with it because I started climbing the charts as a freshman on. He was, mind you now, he was the top senior, one of the top seniors in the country. But I kept climbing the ladder. I kept outrushing him. And he was threatening one time to transfer out and go to America. And they say, we're going to start pulling you a little bit. And I told him, listen, man, y'all can't pull me. I'm going to head over to Dillon High School.
Imagine you would have never asked for your chance, though.
When you never ask, you don't receive.
Imagine you never asked for your chance.
That's not in my DNA.
Yeah.
That's not in my makeup, not to ask. I got to, listen,
Right.
listen, hey, listen.
Game
Give me my
changer.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I know what I'm going to do with it once I get it. I'm going to seize it.
Prepared.
We got to be able to seize opportunities, but we got to be prepared for opportunities. See, I can't seize an opportunity if I'm not prepared for it, because it's going to slip away because I didn't prepare myself for it. I tell people that all the time when they ask me, what was it like on that game day? I say, I knew what it was like years before I got there. I prepared years away that when that opportunity arrived, I'm going to step in it and seize it. People don't realize being able to carry the ball 58 times in a game. Some people ask me, which one meant more to you? It's the carries.
Yeah.
Because it showed
Toughness.
a young guy like myself, 5'6", 171 pounds when I set that record in the Big 8. Understand now, the Big 8 then was the SEC now. That's where all the national champions were coming out. Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado. They were coming out of the Big 8 conference.
Yes.
That's what I tell people all the time. See, y'all know it as the Big 12, and it looks like an air raid. No, back in those days, we was a pound and ground. We whooped tail on the ground. Now, mind you, Kansas, when I got there, leaving St. Thomas as the Broward County all-time leading rusher. I was Broward County's all-time leading rusher when I left Broward County. And I was still struggling to find a home at the Division I level.
Wow. So hold on, before you even go to that, because I'm about to ask you as a South Florida kid going to Kansas.
Yeah.
Did you hear what I'm saying right now? Like, hold on, wait. And hold on, wait. What year was this?
This was in 1988.
Yeah, there's nothing in Kansas.
You see what I'm saying?
There ain't nothing there.
Dorothy,
Yeah.
the Tin Man.
Yeah.
We talking about Kansas. Like,
Yeah.
This is 1988. You going to Kansas. I know a lot of young people watch our podcast
Yeah.
now. This
Yeah.
ain't no, this
probably
ain't
a great way to
what I'm saying?
stay
And they understand that.
Yeah, and they understand that in Kansas, predominantly.
You probably can't get in trouble in Kansas.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can. You can. You can get in trouble. Now, if you choose to get in trouble, you got to be able to understand how your name ring bells, and the value of your name is what's going to keep you out of trouble. If you don't respect that, then you can get in trouble.
Were you able to keep that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Do you think that was from how you were raised?
Yeah.
Just kind of like that Southern respect, that Southern, like, hey, regardless of the resources and things we have access to, you're going to be a good man no matter what.
You got to figure, I grew up, you must respect three things. You respect your name, you respect your family, and you respect the institution that you're a part of.
Yeah.
I believe in those three.
Yep.
You if you believe in those values and you keep those values close to heart, success will come. It's going to come is because you believe that. I believe that. And as I was telling Steve, when I chose the University of Kansas, it was a unique situation. Like I said, I was still searching. Now, coming out of Broward County, you're talking about one of the meccas of when it comes to recruiting. I was Broward County's all-time leading rusher. There was no one in Broward County history.
Has anybody surpassed that?
Yeah, it's been surpassed. As a matter of fact, it was surpassed by one of the guys that I trained.
Yeah.
A guy named Tyrone Moss.
Wow.
He was a dog.
Dog.
He was a straight dog.
Rest in peace,
Rest in
Tyrone
peace
Moss.
for him,
Rest in
man.
peace. Yes.
A guy that I trained.
Yes.
And so to see it when he broke it and me to be there was great. Unbelievable.
We trained together. He trained both
all
of
us
us
trained together. Yeah.
Wow. He's a South Florida kid?
Yep, South Florida.
yeah, South Florida
right out of
kid.
Pompano Beach.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Exit 36, probably one of the in Broward County, probably one of the
best.
exits that have put out more NFL guys than
You guys got it
anything.
down to a geographical location.
Yeah.
That
sure.
see,
We're going to
when
go
you-
look for kids on
36.
exit 36. We're gonna
If
look
you
for-
talk
36.
about anything, and if you go on social media and you type in exit 36, Pompano Beach, Florida is going to pop up.
Yeah.
That's how known that exit is, man.
Wow.
And it's just, and so when I was choosing the University of Kansas, man, it was Florida State is where I wanted to go. I wanted to be a Seminole. I wanted to do the Tomahawk. I wanted to put on that helmet better than anything in the world. That's where I wanted to go. Well, I took 5 visits. Connecticut, and I knew I didn't want to go to Connecticut because I knew my value was bigger than Connecticut. Connecticut at that time wasn't even Division I at the time. I went to Ole Miss. This is how I knew I didn't want to go to Ole Miss. When I sat down from Billy Burrell, he was there. And if you hear that name I just said, Billy Burrell, that speaks volumes. You should already know where I'm finna take you. And I walked into his office and he said, "Sit down there, boy." And once he said, "Sit down there, boy," coming from South Florida, no. He already set the vibe.
Yeah.
Once we got out of the meeting, I went back and told the guys that was my host. Steve Davis, as a matter of fact, was my host. And I said, "Listen, bro, you ain't even
Was
got
that Coach Davis?
Yeah.
Yeah, from
Steve was-
Ely?
yeah, Steve was my
Oh,
host.
wow. Okay, he was at Ole Miss. Yeah. Okay,
I told Steve that, I said, "Listen, bro, no disrespect, but I don't even have to go out the hotel no more because I'm not coming.
Yeah.
I don't even want to, listen, this, you can keep the recruiting money that they gave you for me.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting on tomorrow to come so I can get on this
Get
plane
on
and
this
get
plane.
up out of here."
Yeah.
So I leave there and I go to Florida State. Now, this is, Chuck Amato came down and said, "We bringing you up." I said, "All right." He said, "But now, I'm going to see what Coach Bowden's saying. We're trying to see if we can offer you."
Legendary recruiter.
So I went and met with Coach Bowden. Now, this is, when I say, oh, man, a dream come true to be meeting with Coach Bobby Bowden, man. It's like you can sit down to meet with somebody like Jimmy Johnson. This is how Bobby Bowden was.
Yes.
So Coach Bowden said, "Son, we like you. Chuck speaks highly of you." Chuck Amato was the recruiter. He said, "But, we can't offer you right now." He said, I can offer you next year. I can let you come on as a walk-on and then give you a scholarship next year." Well, I know how that game now works.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, "Coach, no disrespect, but I can't put that pressure on my parents because I knew we had to take loans for that first year, and my parents just wasn't financially set to hold that type of heaviness on top of them when it comes to paying for college." So I said, "Coach, I feel I can find me a scholarship somewhere." So leave there, fly out on a Thursday to the University of Kansas. Now, University of Kansas, you understand now, there was, at that time, it was only 102 Division I schools in college football. Kansas and Kansas State was flip-flopping on 101 and 102. So mind you now, as I go here, I'm watching Nebraska beat them 80-90. Oklahoma, Brian Bosworth takes off his uniform and sign autographs
I remember that.
during the halftime
remember that.
of the game that they were playing because he was done because it was already at 70-0.
Wasn't that on 30 for 30?
Yeah. So it was like, I'm like, okay. So I get there, but what made me realize, I said, man, I can do something here. When I went to the dorms, I loved their dorms. It was nice. Oh man, their dorms are beautiful. You had 2 bedrooms, only 2 people living there. You had full bathroom, 2 sinks. You had the full kitchen, full living room. And it reminded me, just where we like this, where we at in Miami, Jayhawk Towers. That's what they call them. And I said, man, I like it here. But before I could commit to Coach Mason, because Coach Mason we came in together because he had just got hired from leaving Kent State to go to Kansas. And he said, I love you. I wanted you at Kent State, and I want you here. Now, mind you, like I said, I'm 5'6", 160-something pounds. I'm going to the Big 8 conference. I've been watching them on television. So I go back home. People say, man, what you going to Kansas? They said, just like y'all said, man, that number Toto is flat out there. Number Toto and the Wizard of Oz out there.
Right.
But I said, you know what? Was in my mind as I flew back? I said, I don't want to go to a school where I'm one of the good ones to come through. I want to go to a school and become one of the greatest to come through.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the greatest. I didn't want to be one of the good ones. I wanted to be one of the greatest ones to come through. I wanted to take this school from nothing and make it something. Because when you build something, it lasts longer.
Yeah.
It lasts longer.
Yeah.
People are able to go back, and then when they go back to the University of Kansas here in South Florida, first thing when they think about the University of Kansas, they think about me.
Yeah, for sure.
Darn, that's what Tony Sands turned that school around.
Yeah.
And now what you're seeing now is totally different. And I waited some years for me to go into the Hall of Fame at the University of Kansas.
So let's
Sometime
talk.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's talk about that.
Go ahead. I know you want to get into it. Go ahead. Let's get into it.
He brought his jacket out for a reason.
And I normally don't bring it. And Steve my boy, so I said, I'm gonna bring it and let you.
Sure.
It ain't too many people got
Listen,
it.
listen.
You
And
feel me?
that's the introduction that needs to be happening. From somebody from South Florida, from somebody from Broward County, from somebody from my neighborhood where I come from, to be able to put on one of those jackets. That's like us wearing in the insurance industry.
Yeah.
That's wearing our
The
Hall of
President's
Fame
Club
jacket. They give us for doing $500-600 million. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yeah.
And so
That's
like
that.
we looking to get that jacket, right,
Yeah,
bro?
yeah, yeah.
Like, you know what I'm
That's
saying? So
that.
when you come in here with this jacket, and that's what this podcast is about.
Yes, man.
It's like you don't get to get on a podcast, with individuals like yourself at 18, 20 years old making millions of dollars in the insurance industry.
That's what
you know
I'm
what I'm saying.
saying.
Like people have to look up. They have, whether you like it or not, you have to do it.
You
You
have
have
to
to
do
say
it.
this is what it was. And for us to be able to do that, partner together,
Put
business,
numbers together
but then
like that.
put numbers
You're
together.
doing business.
But to put numbers together like that and come from where we come from and get the Ring of Honor jacket, and you just put that's your Hall of Fame, that's your college Hall of Fame jacket that there ain't too many people have. And so when you speak, people got to listen, whether they like it or not.
Correct.
And in the industry that you're in, we talked about the training, right? We talk about, the athletic background, but even the community background that you bring, and with the aspect of how do you help people at that, so we're talking about making decisions at 18 years old, so you getting on a plane, 17 years old, and you coming back and say, oh, I want to be great, so I don't want to go to where everybody else wants me to go. I don't want to go to where everybody else says we need to be at. I want to go to Florida State. I know I want to go there. I know I want to go to Miami, especially being from down here in South Florida,
Correct.
where if you don't go to Miami, if you don't go to Florida State, if you don't go to Florida, it's already like you was just another pick somewhere else.
Yeah.
So for you to go there and then be great,
That's, like I said,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Journey.
The journey of being great, even when you know at the end of the day, this wasn't maybe the first, but you made the decision to get on. Because how hard is that to make a decision at that age? And who helped you make that decision?
The beauty of it all is that my parents didn't, back in them days, our parents didn't get so deeply involved in decision making like they do now. So my mom had never been to Kansas. She didn't take the recruiting trip. I took that recruiting trip by myself because at the end of the day, my mom didn't have to live there. I did. So that ultimate decision was mine to make.
If y'all hear that one more time, so because these are decisions that
mine
people
to
make.
make.
It was your.
That's it. Because I got to live there. I got to walk those halls. I got to deal with the people there. My mom going to get on the plane, even though she didn't even go. The average parent's going to get on the plane and they're going back home. Well, you got to live there. So you got to know that this is right for you.
Yeah.
Not because your mom or dad wanted you to go here. You got to make this decision on how you feel. And your drive, your motivation. My drive and my motivation was there. I wanted to change this place because if I change it, man, I go down in history.
in history.
I go down in history.
who were the names that came before you at Kansas that really stood out?
Oh man, you had some great ones. Gail Sayers.
Oh, yeah.
Kansas Comet.
He
Yeah.
played at the Bears, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know.
I think I read a book about him in school.
Gail Sayers, John Riggins.
Okay.
These were big time names throughout the sports world. But even in that, I'm the only guy. And I don't know if you guys heard the movie Brian's Song
I think so.
with Brian Piccolo
Yes,
and
yes,
Gail
yes,
Sayers.
Yeah.
That's what you talk about.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
That's the movie that we, as
They
kids,
put it
we
in
would all
school,
know.
yeah.
That's the
See,
one we know.
I'm the only guy that's living that can say, I went to both of those guys' school. I went to Brian Piccolo's school. Brian Piccolo went to St. Thomas.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Broke his records. And I went to the University of Kansas where Gail Sayers went and broke his records.
That's
There's
crazy.
only one guy that can say that.
That's going to be a clip right there.
That's a clip right there.
One guy.
Clip right
Hey.
there.
You don't get
Don't
no,
come for me when I post it. Come for Tony Sands.
Hey, listen, you don't get no greater than that. For me to say, a young man coming out of the inner city, when I was told that I wouldn't be nothing,
Yeah.
you wouldn't amount to nothing, and to say I'm sitting up here with you guys,
God had
and
other
I can
plans.
say one in a couple categories.
One.
I can say I'm the only one that have broke those two guys' records. I'm the only one that have played the game of football, that have carried the football 58 times.
What's a
in
lot
one game?
in a game? Like what's like, oh
30.
man, that guy
30,
carried it a lot.
25, nowadays 25, 30. If you get 30, you was up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, if they would have left me in the game, I came out with probably about 2 minutes left in the game. And the only way it's so ironic, they came to me, and I didn't know I was up for a record. They said at halftime, John Jefferson, who was one of the greatest receivers that played with the San Diego Chargers, it was him and Jane Lofton. He came up to me because he was the receiver coach. He said, man, you know you got about 125 yards at halftime on 25 carries. I said, for real? Okay, because see, we wasn't big into records. We were trying to develop something. Now, man, you not now. I told you I came in when I got to the University of Kansas. Kansas hadn't had a winning season in over 20 years.
Right.
Look where I'm finna take you. My script, Hollywood couldn't have wrote a better one. And I'm gonna tell you why. That game, understand, when I laid down that night before I had to do the speech, normally when you do a talk on senior day, this your last game, all the seniors get up and get a chance to say something at that last dinner. Well, I got up. And when I got up, I spoke about what each guy in that room meant to me. I spoke about what it meant to come here, what that meant to me, what I had to leave. Because when I left in '88 to go to the University of Kansas, my first son was born. My son was born on August 4th. Mind you, at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to get on a plane and leave out at 8 o'clock that morning out of Fort Lauderdale Airport and to leave. So I had a lot of mixed emotion because I'm saying to myself, as a black man, that we hear that we leave our children and our families. I had to leave my son behind with my now wife of 35 years. I had to leave her behind to take care of my responsibility that I had to take care of. But I had said to myself, in order to make his life better, I had to take this journey here. I had to get on this plane. Because if I get on this plane, I change everything around me. I change his life for the better. But if I stay here, what will I struggle to do? So I took that journey, moved them up my junior year. Once I got established, because my sophomore year, I set records again and I started getting established. So it was a beautiful time. I said, okay, now it's time. I brought them up with me, and the history of it was I broke 17. When I left the University of Kansas, I had 17 rushing records. I owned every rushing record that they had.
How many of them do you still own now?
I own about 4 of them now.
About 4.
Did Ashton just go? Was it Ashton Genty? Did he just go through there?
Ashton, Devin Neal was the one that went through with us. Devin was the one that ran all over Colorado.
Okay.
I was the honorary captain. I was brought up to be the honorary captain of that Colorado Kansas game. But like I said, with this one, man, it was our last game. It was the last game. Now we going to understand when you talk about numbers in business, this is how you can tell when you're in the red and you're not. In the red in college and you're not. We were 5-5 going into this game. 5-5 two things could happen. Either I can accomplish the goal that I went there to set out to where I wanted to become a winner, or I can come in there the same way and come in and go out the same way. But I wasn't determined to do that. We were in that game, and like I said, he told me I had 125 yards. I'm like, oh, okay, wow. Didn't really know what that meant a lot because I wasn't used to, statting up game. So as the game started going, we started rolling. Now, we were playing our rival. At halftime, the score was 20-21, so the game was still close. They came back to me again, and they said, man, God, dog, you close to a Big 8 record. So for real, they said like 370. And my coach told me, he said, you want to go for it? I said, I didn't have to say it, but they said it. They said, yeah. My running backs, because I normally would take myself out sometime and say, hey, man, coach, let them play.
Mm-hmm.
Because they practice hard. Mm-hmm. Well, in this game, I didn't get a chance to say that. Each one of them guys, George White, Shaka Johnson, Maurice Douglas, I remember those names clearly. They said, we don't want to go in, and they backed off. Finish it. So we got the Big 8 record. Then they came back and said, you're close to a national record. Because now, mind you, in the beginning of that season against San Diego State and Pacific, San Diego State, Marshall Faulk was there. Mm-hmm. Marshall Faulk had set it at 386, the national record. And they said, you can get it. We was like 10 yards away from it. And he came to me, he said, you want to go for it? I said, Coach, let's finish this thing.
Do it.
Let's go. And we went to pounding them. We just went to pounding, and we got the record. And Coach called the timeout and said, we want to give them, we want to horse them out the game. But mind you, like I said, we still had 2 minutes still to go in the game. Yeah. So he was scared that when he go to the press conference, they were going to eat him up. How you let him rush up all them yards on that? Yeah. That's disgrace. But boom, boom. We go into the press conference, and the first question was asked him, why you didn't let him go for 400 yards?
It's always like that. It's always like that,
right?
Yeah.
Why you didn't let him go for 400 yards? Because I could have probably went to 60 and forced something.
Of course.
It was just a mere fact.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, even in that, I didn't realize what I had done until that night. Yeah. We had a big basketball game. Kansas basketball is like everything. And they had honored me at halftime. They brought me out. My brother called me. He said, hey, man, they say, you set the record? I said, yes, I set 2 records in the process. It was, and it was just elated throughout the country. I had a friend that was in Japan that called and said, man, they talking about you set a record. I said, yeah, and at that time I thought it was, it started resonating to me when I was seeing on ESPN, hey, I done something good here. But not only that, that was an individual thing. But the team goal, the business goal of that is that we beat Missouri. We beat them 52-21. Mm-hmm. But my team, we won as a team. That meant we won in business. We won because now we're 6-5. When you look at winning and losing in sports, you could be 500.
Yeah, you gotta be over that 500. Yeah.
And we was over that 500, so we were winners, man. Yeah. Kansas had its first winning team, but we built to that. We continued to build the team that we had. Our guys, we came in with a lot of young guys, man. When I got there, a lot of undersized guys. Yeah. But he recruited guys that had heart. So. Like I said, we was able to set precedent. The next year after I left, now mind you, I'm going to throw some names out to you that was on that D-line. Dana Stubblefield, Gilbert Brown. Gilbert Brown is considered a grave digger.
Gilbert Brown, yeah.
We had dogs on our front line. And the next year, they went to the Hula Bowl. That was the first time that they had been in a bowl in 20 years, too.
Wow.
That next year. And so they called, Coach Mason called me. He said, hey, man, we're going to the Hula Bowl. We'd like to fly you with us. Despite me not now, for a coach to do that, hey, we like to have you with us. Because they knew what I meant to that team and what I did for that team, but I didn't get a chance to experience a bowl game with that team. So they were saying, hey, you come with us. But at that time, I was in Canada with the Toronto Argonauts, so I couldn't leave out. But just the respect and the honor of it to where my guys were calling me, hey, man, come go with us to this game, man. We're going to the, we made it. And then I got an opportunity to play in 2 bowl games, 2 senior games, which was the East-West Shrine and the East-West Shrine and the Aloha Bowl. And mind you, when bowl pickings were going, you got to get picked to go to these senior bowls.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to come. And I didn't realize that. My coach had to vouch for me because they used to call me Tuxedo Tony because I wore a tuxedo to every game. Now, mind you, I didn't wear that tuxedo because we was financially equipped. Yeah. That was something that I went to the thrift store to get a jacket because I had no jacket to wear on game. Yeah. And our coach wanted us to wear a jacket. So I just went and bought a bow tie because bow ties were cheaper. Yeah. Yeah. And one of the media guys said, "God, that looked like a tuxedo." It wasn't a tuxedo. I threw together because I had to have a jacket, but I financially wasn't able to have a jacket, so they called me tuxedo. So the people at the bowl games thought I was a hot dog. So when I look at it and I seen some of the things that Shador and them was going through now.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, it took me back some of that, man, one man's perception is not your reality. Yeah. And I was like, when I got there, once I got to the bowl games, and you visit a lot of the children's hospitals that you have to, you're on a community circuit. Man, everybody loved me. The guy called back and he said, "Man, thank you." He told my head coach, "Thank you." My head coach was like, "What?" He said, "Man, thank you for sending him. Thank you for talking us to taking him." Yeah. He is the talk of the bowl game. His community, what he does with the children is beyond. So thank you for convincing us that your reality of who he is needed to be the forefront of what we are seeing. And it like I said, it was a blessing, man. My life was, like I said, a journey. And then, you do all that again, and here I go again now on draft day. You tell people all the time that, if you do this, this, and this, we're going to draft you. Well, I ran a 4.4, did everything that they had asked me, put up the numbers that they asked me. And at that time, we had 12 rounds. To be able to sit in a room, to sit at my house. I was at my house with my wife. She's my wife now, and wife then, and when I was going through it, and not hear your name called, man, was one of the most depressing things that a man could go through. Within 4 hours, I was getting a call from the Arizona Cardinals say, "Hey, we want to bring you in as a undrafted free agent. Would you take it? We love you. Coach Bidwell, love what you bring to the table." And I said, "Sure, yeah, I love it." Spent a short stint there with them. Went from there to the Canadian League. But to be able to go through that emotions is something, just to come back from that. And that's why I say I got to tell people all the time to see, even down to the prank that was played on Shador, even down to the game being played with him. And I remember I wrote it on Facebook, of what they're doing to him. I say the things that they're doing to him, they buck breaking him. Mm-hmm. You understand what I mean by buck breaking? I had to take your young guys back.
Yeah.
That's what they did. They did that to slaves when they wanted to get a slave in line.
Yeah.
They buck broke.
Yeah.
If you ever watched the movie Roots, Kunta Kinte had to be buck broken. That's why they chopped off his feet. But they chopped off his feet in front of the other big bucks. Mm-hmm. Because if you violate this, this is what's going to happen to you. So the same thing the NFL was telling Deion Sanders and all the other parents who think that they might be able to run us.
Yes.
This is what's going to happen to you. We're going to take the biggest buck.
Yes.
And Shador Sanders was the biggest buck of college football. Yeah. And we're going to show you that if you get out of line, we're going to show you what we're going to do to him. And it's called buck breaking. And I put it up on social media that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some people asked me, well, what's buck breaking? And I explained it to him. And they said, "Oh," and the word went to traveling.
Yeah.
My wife, he would say, "Man, boy, somebody got it up on what's they buck breaking it." Yeah. So it went to moving. The word went to moving throughout. And some people you take criticism, but you explain yourself. Understand? This is understand what we're dealing with here now. Yeah. We're dealing with the NFL that's trying to show him and more or less show his dad that you don't run us. You don't. And me and Dion, we're cool. That's my buddy. And it was sad to see that a father had to endure that
Watch that.
Yeah.
for his child when you know that this boy was Shador was
First
supposed to have been a first round pick, top 5 pick.
Right.
How I know that? Because I deal with scouts every day. I deal with scouts all the time because of my training business.
So when they said his interviews were,
They
just made that up.
Yeah, don't. If I'm going to treat you the way I gotta treat you, I gotta sell an image before I treat you that way because I gotta get the masses to buy into that.
Planting things.
You see what I'm saying? I gotta sell that to you.
Yeah.
That his interviews were bad. Oh, he had a weak arm.
Yeah.
All these things. Well, if you look at a couple of quarterbacks that went before him,
Yeah.
their arms were weak.
Yeah.
I think it was what's the one? My boy out of Ole Miss. I watched him at the combine. He threw a pass, and it didn't even get to the receiver. It dropped.
Yeah.
So, and when I said, okay, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna see how this thing plays out. Picks are going. They're going. And then when I saw him get picked before him, and then I seen Jalen Melrose get picked before him, I said, oh, they butt breaking him big time.
Yeah.
They showing him big time. You're telling me nothing against Jalen Melrose, but Jalen Melrose is not a Shador Sanders.
Right.
Who else have they done? Like, is there other examples of guys they done like this?
They don't. He's probably been the biggest one.
Yeah.
Because his dad. If we go back and say, okay, we're going to compare it to words that were said.
Yeah.
So now, I'm going to take you back to words that were said. You got to figure Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, when he went
I
through
was
his
going to bring it
situation.
up because they were like,
Yeah.
well, Peyton and Eli, and they had a
Eli
relationship
dad
with
said the
their
same
dad.
thing.
Yeah.
Eli dad said the same. Even on draft day, when I was at the draft, we don't want to play for San Diego.
Right.
And they asked me, you sure you don't? No, we don't. Well, San Diego drafted him anyway. But remind you, before they got to the 5th pick, it came up, well, we've made a trade. We sent Ryan Leaf, that was picked by the Giants, to San Diego, and we're sending Eli Manning to the Giants. So they flip-flopped the first 2 picks. You follow me what I'm saying?
Yeah.
John Elway, dad was the same thing, said the same exact thing. And they gave John Elway his way.
Yeah.
Shador Sanders and Deion Sanders could not play that same game. They weren't going to allow them to play that same game because guess what? If I allow you to play it, everybody behind you may think that they can do it. So they really broke him to that standpoint.
Are there any black owners?
No, there's not no black owners.
Has there ever been a black owner?
Well, they're what they call minority.
Yeah, the minority owner.
And probably the biggest minority owner right now is Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
But it's crazy that you bring that up because 3 years ago, I had a chance to go out to Vegas and speak with a lot of black executives in the NFL, minority executives. And I gave them numbers. I threw out numbers 102. I threw out a bunch of numbers because at that time, the league was only in existence. The merger of the league was only in existence 102 times. Well, I told them how many black head coaches there were, how many black head coach, and what was the tenure at that time of a black head coach holding on to the job.
Tomlin got to be the longest.
Tomlin was the longest.
Yep.
And the actual time that a black coach held a position outside of Tomlin was 2.2 years at the time.
Whoa.
And I threw those numbers out there and I told them, I'm going to come back to those numbers, but I want you to marinate on those numbers to think of what I'm saying. They had no clue because when I broke it down to them, they was like, oh my goodness. Now I'm telling these guys, I say, the only way we're going to get change if you guys make the change. If not, your kids are going to deal with this same thing. And I told them, I said, I asked them, how many of you guys woke up this morning and said, I don't want to be a GM, I want to own a team? I said, give me a show of hands of how many. No hands went up. And I asked them, I said, why don't we have any hands going up in here? What, you don't feel like that's reality for you? I say, understand, the room that we're sitting in, the guy that owned this franchise came up the same way you guys did.
Yeah.
So his dream became his reality. Why can't your dream become your reality? It's going to be the way that we think, the way that we value, the way that we see each other. See, sometimes we gotta understand that reality of that hood thing. It travels with us because in the hood, sometimes we don't want to see the neighbor do better than us.
Yeah. Not thinking big enough.
Yeah.
Not thinking you can be in that room.
They didn't think that they can do it. They had a misperception that their value of who they are is not greater than
I always
where they can
felt
go.
weird about it because even since I was probably like high school age, I started to just think like all these owners are white.
Yeah.
And
No, there's one minority.
There's a minority owner.
Shah Khan, and that's the Jaguars owner, but he's from Arabia. He's and he got his position by someone else.
No African American.
No,
and so what I
African-
looked at it as
When the sport is primary.
yeah, and I was
When
looking
it's
at it, I was like,
yeah.
what is the difference between slavery and when these white owners, et cetera, just would look at us and have us work, et cetera, and do all this stuff. And I was like, now it's like you get compensated, but it's still a bunch of white people just watching you
Play a game.
Play a game.
A
And, hey,
gladiator
here's a
sport.
couple bucks.
Compensated
But at the end
enough
of the
to
day,
eat.
when you know the data better than probably we do, or at least I do, when it comes to the money that the NFL is keeping, like the guys,
of course.
like how many guys go through and then leave and are broke or worse off, and then the mental instability from the emotional high of being praised to then like nothing or not making it, and you know what I mean? Like it's got to be kind of devastating.
Yeah.
Do you understand that the suicide rate in the NFL is greater than any other sport?
And veterans.
The suicide is more prevalent throughout the NFL than it is in basketball, than it is in hockey, than it is in baseball, than any other sport, because of the things that a football player have to endure in his journey to be successful. And understand the value of his money is not the same value of an NBA and a baseball player. There's no different value, but their body is beat on a lot more. So I tell guys all the time, for a guy like Mike Tomlin to be in the position that he's in, and that's why it blew my mind when I saw so many guys hating on Prime once he got to Colorado.
Yeah.
And it was more, per se, us, as the kids would say, wishing on his downfall. And that's amazing that we don't, because with his journey, he's helped Michael Vick, Eddie George, and several other guys, because when you went to HBCUs, understand, when you went to a HBCU,
I went to an HBCU for a week.
and I'm going to tell you, HBCUs were considered,
I was the lightest kid.
HBCUs
like, Dad,
are
where did you
considered-
send me?
HBCUs are considered, as a coach, a graveyard position.
For sure.
You never leave.
Wow.
Yes.
You never leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dion showed that I can leave an HBCU and go to a Power 5 and raise more money and put more value to the sport than any guy that have been into it and understand the dynamics of what he got to deal with.
Well, I think it's the same way though. Like it had to be a Deion Sanders to do that. It's the same way when it's going to be an owner of a team now.
Yes.
It's got to be like a Magic Johnson
correct.
to do it. Like
Correct.
because
Yeah.
it's like the thing is that when you don't see people like yourself that's ever done it. It's very hard
almost,
for
like,
you to
don't believe
imagine.
it. And you almost get tricked into being kind of like with where we were in our previous business. You almost get tricked into being grateful for what you. Hey, just be grateful for what you have.
What you have.
For what we gave you.
But the thing is that while we was taught to be grateful, but also miss the other things that was going over our head.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like being in football. It's like you being a linebacker and you chase the short route and they just throw it right behind you every time. Every time. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what the position it feels like, right?
Yeah.
In a position.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's why I got to tell guys all the time, and I didn't know it. That's why, me and my struggles at school, I wasn't the smartest guy at all. I remember when I got to St. Thomas, I thought I was going to be a failure. I thought they were going to put my grades up on the door, and kids were going to see my F, because at St. Thomas they'll put your grades up on the door. You go check the door to see where I'm at. And I thought kids was going to see me get F's and D's and things of that nature. But I learned one thing in the process. I thought everybody there was smart. Well, everybody there wasn't smart. That was my perception of everyone. Once I got there and I saw that everybody else wasn't smart as I thought, I had to figure out what these people were doing to survive here, what they were doing to be successful.
Yes.
One thing I learned that they studied, they applied themselves.
Yeah.
They spent time after school looking at books, studying, reading, getting help. So once I did that, then I saw my grades started elevating.
Yeah.
It started going to where now I'm saying to myself,
Right.
I belong here.
Yeah.
Same thing went to college. Same thing once I got to college, the same thing, you know. I remember my English teacher told me that I'd never make it. You know, when you go to college, you have to take that, in that English class, that first class, you have to take that test, that one-on-one test.
Yeah.
So I took it and I failed it. And the lady said, she called me, she said, son, you ain't gonna make it in college. I said, oh my goodness. As I walked down here, I said, oh, this lady just told me I'm miles away that I ain't gonna make it.
He ain't gonna. Hey, whoever that teacher was, he ain't gonna make it in college. But he wrote him a book. He got. Matter of fact, just on the book that you have out right now, right? And I know you got another one coming out here. This one.
That one is deep, man.
This one's deep. Now, and before you know, I want to say this because you know I know Mrs. Sands for a long time as well.
Yeah.
And you know, first of all, congratulations on 35 years of being
35
for another black man. That's
35 years of showing that it can be done.
But how important is it to have a woman in your life? You know, before we get to the book, because this is how this works.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like, like how important, because I say this all the time. He says this all the time. As we are in business and you're growing and you see younger guys, like how important, you say you started college with a son that you had to leave home.
Yeah.
Then you finally get to your junior year where you now bring your family with you to Kansas, which a black woman from Broward County going to Kansas. It was hard enough to get you from here to go, but to get a black woman from Broward County to go to Kansas, and now y'all have a family, and now you, like, how important in just in your journey in, like, whether it was school, football, now your business, now you know, your community leader, like, she's been there the whole time, and she has been like, you tell. I mean, but I know her, but I know, like, you say, like, what does that mean? And I mean, I know you're gonna say, you know, how important it is, but what does it mean to, like, really have the right person?
It means everything. It means chemistry. It means understanding, uplifting.
And you travel every day. Like, hold on,
I'm on the road.
Like, he on the road every day. He's doing books every day. He's doing conferences every day.
58 carries.
Like, you know what I'm saying? 58 carries.
Same mindset.
I tell guys all the time. I say, listen, the unique thing that I had with my wife. Sometimes some guys can't travel because their wives either want to go, you know, and I ain't saying there's nothing wrong with it, want to go with them. Well, sometimes you got to go to business deals and you got to be hustling and moving and doing. So if your wife back in the hotel, you can't be saying, how minutes be the God, or what time is I got to hurry up and get back to the hotel because my wife, so my wife is not a traveling person. She was one of those people, she came up under that era, is that I'm going to stay in the backdrop. I'm going to guide you from, I'm that guy that's signing the deal behind the deal.
Yeah.
And that's what's
the
her.
support.
She was there, hey, listen, I'm going to support you. You go and do what you got to do. I'm here. To where in my training business, because my wife right now is a cosmetologist, she's a stylist, but she's also a seamstress. But my business of training afforded us to open up 4 more other businesses. And I started a training business. When I moved back here, I started the training business for free. I started my business for free to
that hustler mindset is, I wish, and
to get it to where,
that's crazy. Keep going.
I had to, and see,
I got so much.
Imagine I'm coming from coaching college football.
Yeah.
I was a running back coach when I went back. After I finished, I went back and became a running back coach. And I said to my first 2 clients, and I was up in Kansas at the time, Gilbert Brown and Dana Stubblefield came to me because they was coming out the same year. They say, hey, coach, Tony, would you help us? Would you help us train for the combine? I said, yeah, sure, because I had already went through it now. Mind you, So I trained them and got them ready. Then I got drafted the last pick of the first round. Gilbert got drafted the first pick of the second round. So I'm saying to myself, I got something here. I'm going to take this thing back to South Florida where I know it can flourish. I know it can breed. I just got to water it the right way, plant the right seeds, and it's going to bloom. Now, understanding, I'm going back to nothing. But I knew the soil was rich. The soil was rich.
So good.
If I plant the right seeds and I take time to water it every day, I'm going to get the fruits of my labor. I'm gonna be able to get the nice, juicy mango that I planted. And I came back and I started my training business for free. Now, back then, no, training is not what y'all see now. I tell people all the time, there wasn't no social media. Wasn't no Instagram where I can train a video, film a video, then go upload it. Wasn't none of that. You had to take flyers and put them on cars. Well, you'll go to a Little League game and you take a 5x7 card and you putting them in windshields, putting them indoors. That's how we advertised back then. That's how we grinded back then.
Yeah, door to door.
You
car,
was doing
game
the
to
work.
game.
You was beating. You was paving. And I didn't realize when I was paving the way for a lot of trainers throughout the world.
Yeah.
Because when you look here in South Florida, everybody that's training now came up under me.
Sure.
Who's the best that ever came through you? Athlete.
I mean, when you look at pure talent wise that I've had, oh man, I would probably have to say Patrick Peterson.
Wow.
And Denard Robinson.
Yeah.
Wow.
When it say just pure athletic ability.
Yeah.
Now athletes that have gone the furthest.
results.
Because I had to, I trained some Hall of Famers. Mike, when I trained him, Mike, Al Harris, who's now in the Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame, who's now
coach with Dallas?
He's now with Chicago. He
Chicago.
was assistant head coach with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
So now he's the Chicago Bears assistant
Yeah.
defensive coordinator.
What?
So yeah. So
Congratulations.
I mean,
Wow.
it's
Come on.
and I got about like 5 guys now that are in the NFL right now that are coaches that came up under my tree.
Wow.
So that speaks volumes on what you're doing, man. And like I say, it's about the journey.
Yeah.
When you know the journey, you know all the ins and out of the path.
That's great.
So that's what I tell people, man. Sometimes you gotta grind this thing from the bottom to understand what the
There ain't
top
no other
means
way.
to you.
Yeah, there ain't no other way. We have to wrap up. I have one major question on my mind. I really want to hit the youth. That's what Steve and I really work with in the insurance space and sales space. What do you think is the major difference between the youth today and the youth back then? Because you'll see a lot of individuals around, my age and younger than my age of more complaining, more victims, and we don't have the resources, and how are we gonna make it out the mud, and how are we gonna make it out the hood, and like. The hood today ain't the hood that was back then. And difficulty today ain't difficulty back then.
Right.
So what's the issue?
Yeah. Right.
The issue is social media has changed it. Not only that, but parents have changed.
We got softer.
Yeah,
My parents still had a switch.
The parents and understanding your value, understanding these kids nowadays, they want everything. Because they don't, and I don't blame it on them, because they haven't seen no other way. So you can't expect them to see what we saw, because they don't understand. Some of these kids don't even understand that slavery was real. They don't understand. If you ask some of them, who is Martin Luther King? They only know Martin Luther King because they know we celebrate a holiday. But what he's done, they really have no idea. So we're expecting some people, these young ones, to grasp what it means to value something when they have no value that is given to them. They gotta understand what the value is first. Like when we look at just say valuing their value. Now they've got more. They got more resources to become successful than we had. Social media has turned, whether you lying on it or it's becoming reality where you're making money on it. Everybody's been sold a dream. So they don't want them work hard because social media's told them all I got to do is put up a couple of videos.
Making the dream look cheap.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's no one wants to do it hard. And that's the scary part about it because these kids don't know what it feels like to dig out of a hole. They would rather take that same shovel. Now they got a shovel to dig themselves out, but they'll put that shovel to the side and say, "Oh well, I'm defeated."
Yeah.
That's it, because they don't know no way to fight. They don't know how to fight because we told them that you don't got to fight. Oh, that's like we tell boys. Oh, you got to be tough. Don't cry. We'll cuddle our girls. Oh, baby, it's all right. But we tell the boy, listen, you got to stand on 10 toes. Well, he needs that same cuddling that she needs, because we got to be able to cuddle him, change his mindset, and let him understand why I'm telling him that he's got to be a lot tougher. We'll just tell him, boy, shut up. You don't supposed to cry. But we're not telling him why.
Yeah.
So he's confused. And the only thing he knows is that I got to be tough. So when tough situations come, he don't know how to deal with them because he's never been told that. So I don't blame this generation for that. I blame the generation before. Yeah. If I told my kid, I want you to do better than what I did, but dang, what was wrong with me? Nothing. I was successful. So what was given to me is equal to given to you, because I had a great life. So that's what I'm saying. These parents, these kids, you can't blame them because they don't know no other way. You can't expect them to know anything else.
But there's no microwave success.
No, there's not.
No microwave success.
There's not. There's not. Yeah. And that's what they don't show that though. Right. They're not willing to show that. So
well, we appreciate you, Tony.
Thank you, man.
Listen, the legendary Tony
My
Sands.
pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Not only just as a trainer, not only as a community leader.
Yeah, my pleasure.
But being able to bless us here today, we appreciate it. We know, you family here as always. You family with us, with me, and what you're doing now. And like I said, we already got we got his book here that he has. I was before my time, and then the next one, which is like you said, it's a little bit more deep, right? Yeah. It's a little deeper. This
that touch into faith and life, and clinging to your faith despite having to make a tough decision. Are you able to truly hold on to your faith?
Wow. Yeah.
Or you cave on what someone thinking? And I had to stand on faith despite me possibly being I may lose my wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of my faith. I'm a Jehovah's Witness. So, there are certain things that we believe in that we don't. We don't believe in blood transfusions. And that was, my wife needed a blood transfusion, but I was willing to say that I'm not going to take a blood transfusion.
Yeah.
And in spite of doctors telling me to prepare my children, that, she might not make it in the morning. Yeah. So imagine what it feels like when you're now, at that time we was 33 years in, and I'm looking at my wife in a coma, knowing that she might not make it out of there. And then I got to look at my children and say, God, But I knew I had to hang on to my faith. Faith don't cave, people cave.
Yeah.
So, I stood on my faith.
Yeah.
And my wife now is a miracle. She's a blessing to see that if you stand on faith and you believe in what you believe in, success will come.
Amen. Let's go.
Let's go.
Fire. Another episode of Adversity Kings, guys. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. This was the Tony Sands, 58 carries. Let's go.
Yep.
Peace.
Peace.